afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How are we today? I see some familiar faces from last time, so it's great. I have a tendency that someone just reminded me that I can go through the 3 hours without a break in the middle. So please remind me around 2:30 to give you a break for 10 minutes, because the last time we went through the 3 hours in one shot. So if you feel like you need that break, let me know. My name is Sahar Andrade, and I am one of the instructors here for Pacific Linux. I have my own company, and I am a diversity leadership and cultural competence consultant and speaker. I love working with Pacific Linux. This is actually, I'm a new instructor. This is my 3rd time. My background comes from, for diversity and cultural competence, comes from being lived, raised, educated, worked in 7 different countries, and traveled to probably 50 countries. I worked for a long time for international airlines, where I would open new markets for them in different countries, so I had to study the culture, the language, and as a result, I was lucky enough to learn 5 languages, which is great. My background education-wise, and why I have a special affinity for Pacific Linux, I hold a double Bachelor of Medicine, Internal Medicine and Surgery, with a major in psychiatry. That's why Pacific Linux has a very special place in my heart. I am from an American from Egyptian descent, and my husband is Hispanic. So it's just like we are like, and guess who speaks Spanish in the house? Guess, just one guess. The sessions that I like to give are not lectures. So I like it to be interactive, especially today in the ethics. Ethics is going to have to be a lot of back and forth. There are no wrong answers. There are no wrong questions, or like someone wants to call it stupid questions. Questions are just questions, and answers are just answers. I'm not here to judge. No one here is here to judge. Confidentiality from my side is kept from anybody and everybody. I want to let you know that I'm taping this session, but as you see, the camera is towards the screen. It's not towards any of you, so none of you will be in the taping. And I like to have a lot of interaction going back and forth. We have a lot of exercises and activities that we have to exchange ideas about, because specifically the ethics subject, it's not like people want to think white or black. There is a lot of gray areas in the middle, and that's why we need to discuss and come to some kind of an agreement. Before I start any session, I like always to ask you, what made you come in today? Or what are your expectations? What do you look to take away from the session today? So we make sure that we hit everything you expected to. So you won't leave at 4 o'clock and say, oh, I thought she was going to talk about this, but she never did. So I want you to tell me, what is it that you expect to take away from today's session? You're here for a reason, right? What is it that you're looking to take away from today's session? By the way, if no one volunteers, I pick. So one should take one for the team. So go ahead, please. Why do we talk about ethics, especially these days? Why is it becoming so important to talk about ethics, especially these days in organizations, especially nonprofits, especially big corporations, even the 100 Fortune companies? Everybody is under a microscope these days. That's why, because ethics is the backbone of any organization, if not of any individual. I mean, there are personal ethics and there are organizational ethics, and we're going to talk about both of them today, and how they can be in line and how they contradict each other sometimes. And we're going to learn that what is legal is not necessarily ethical, and what is ethical might not be legal, or might not be what is acceptable in an organization. Because we all, as individuals, we bring our own ethics to the workplace, and sometimes there is a contradiction between our own ethics and the organization ethics. That's where we have dilemmas sometimes. So today, this is what we are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the definition of ethics, what is diversity and what is culture, and how is it involved in ethics. Why should we even talk about diversity and culture when we talk about ethics? What's an ethical person? What is an ethical behavior? understand employees' rights and the employer's rights as far as ethics are concerned, understand how to model ethical behavior, what is unethical behavior, how to report unethical behavior, and enhance the knowledge basically of how to have the proper ethical climate or culture in an organization. So to start with, when I say ethics, the word ethics, what comes to your mind? Please.
Like a set of rules or standards you hold yourself.
Absolutely. Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. Ethics basically are our guiding light. They are our true north, our internal GPS, if you want to call it. They are the principles, the values, the beliefs that actually pushes us to do something or not to do something. Ethics these days, they're playing a very large role into this century, especially that there have been a lot of unethical behaviors from a lot of corporations that were supposed to be one of the biggest in the nation and sometimes in states. And we're going to be talking about different case studies as we go. President Bush said, when he was president, he said that actually the United States lives in a crisis of ethics, where ethics are not really be dealt with the right way. And I think the ethical dilemmas or ethical problems are not only here in the States, but they are all over the world, because the more the economical status of the whole wide world go down, the more people start playing with their ethics somehow. Because they want to live, they want to livelihood. That doesn't make it right, but that's how it begins. So the ethics govern the conduct of the people, and the people are what makes an organization. Without you as employees, without you as people in the organization, Pacific Clinics, for example, would not exist. You can teach people, one very important thing that we need to understand is that we cannot teach people morals and values. Everybody comes with their own factory seal about their morals and their values. You cannot teach someone morals and values, but you can let them know, you can teach them what are the ethical behaviors acceptable in the workplace they work into. So you cannot change someone's morals and beliefs unless they want to, but you need to let them know, and you can let them know what is acceptable or not acceptable in an organization. And I know it sounds confusing, but hopefully by the end of the session, we will know what all that means. There are two things, main things that handle the ethics. There is the law and there is religion. This basically, believe it or not, where the ethics are coming from. First thing is the law, and the law deals with crime, basically, and punishment. What's legal, what's not legal. But religion comes with virtue and sin. So we are between as people in an organization, we have to weigh, basically, and religion doesn't have to be any kind of religion, it could be even spirituality, and what people believe as right and wrong. And between both of them comes the organizational ethics. It's between actually the law and the personal ethics, or where we come from. So the organizational ethics, it goes beyond the law, and it links our personal beliefs and its focus in the organization, so everybody comes together on the same principles to achieve common goals, especially that we live in a very diverse world. California is one of the most diverse states in the United States. You know, that's why it's very important. Diversity and culture and the word ethics mean different things to different people. And that's why we care about diversity. I think there is a seat here if you want. Ethics are divided into two, our mind and our heart. So we kind of balance everything between what our soul, what our heart tells us, and what our mind tells us. Because sometimes we have some intra-conversation where we talk something that my heart feels is right, but my brain tells me, no, it's wrong. And it could be vice versa, and I'm sure that we all went into conversation like that, where our heart says, it's the right thing to do, but my brain says, yeah, but I'm going to be in trouble if I do that. Though I feel it's the right thing, my mind tells me not to do it because of regulations or disciplines or whatever. So ethics are both a matter of the heart and the mind, both of them together. But what brings ethics forward, how someone acts on their ethics, is basically their courage. To have the courage to fulfill or to go through with everything that you feel is right, even if everybody else feels that wrong. Have you ever heard the expression, I will die for what I believe in? That's exactly that. That's the conviction, that's the courage that someone has to move forward. Do we know where the word courage originally came from? The origin of courage is the word cur, C-U-R, and it's a Latin word, and that Latin word means heart, means heart. So actually the word courage comes from the heart. So we have to have the heart, the courage, and the mind to go with to fulfill the ethics. There are two kinds of behavioral ethics that we go through. There is, and I'm sure that when we're going to go through the explanation, you know what I mean. The first one is through consequences, meaning that the end, what does it do? Justifies the means. And people say that, you know what, as long as the results is going to be okay and it's going to help people, whatever I can do in between is okay. And some people say no, it has to be right and it has to be good from beginning to end. And this is people that are principles and belief where they feel they will die for what they believe in. And they don't sway, they go through their way and they just believe in what they have, and no one will ever convince them to do otherwise, even if they're going to be hurt. There are people that believe in whatever they believe in, and they will seriously die for it. I mean, we have been seeing on a personal level all over the world with all the revolutions that helping, people are going to the streets to die and they don't care, because the principle that they have, the principle of freedom, of respect, of integrity, is more important to them than their own lives. That's what we call principally guided. Versus consequences, where it's more a lot, and we see that in a lot of politics all over the world, where people say, you know what, the end justifies the means. It's a Machiavelli word. And then we have something called the double doctrine effect, or we call it DDE. And this is a very important one because we see it happening almost every day. So what does it say? It tries to reconcile between the heart and the mind, so we can make a justified, if you want to call it, ethical decision. So what does that mean? We say that if a morally good effect is going to come from an action, occasionally we can have the morality or the morale to permit ourselves to do it. It's not exactly the end justify the means, but it's because we see that to perform an action, as long as what we're doing is morally permitted, the end is okay, even if there are secondary effects that are not very moral. That's basically what we call collateral damage. You know, so people say, you know what, it's gonna help a lot of people, what we're doing is not illegal, is not wrong, but we might hurt some people at the end. So is it right or wrong? So that's what double doctrine effect, and we're gonna see an example of that in a minute. And then the double doctrine effect has strong rules, and that's why we cannot abuse it. And the emphasis here is when we say that it's morally permissible, not required. And we have to make that choice. That's why we have to be ethically very well directed. And we need to know, for example, I'm going to give you an example. There are two train tracks next to each other. One of them is used, and there are trains that pass all the time. And the next track is not used. It's basically abandoned. No one uses it anymore. It's an old one, no one uses it. There is a group of children, 8 children, are playing on the tracks where the train passes all the time. And there is one child playing on the tracks that are not used. There is a strong curve, so the train coming cannot see the children. And you are there and you see a train coming. And if you don't act, something wrong is going to happen. What would you do?
Alarm the children.
Which ones?
All
Okay. What if they don't get you? You are kind of far away from them. They can't hear you. What would you do?
Run towards them.
Run towards them. Okay, that's one. What else?
Divert the train to the track where one child if.
But that can kill the child.
I know. but-
Because
but,
if,
I mean, like you said, if you're trying to get their attention, you can't, you know. Wouldn't it be, I mean, versus 8 children dying versus 1? I mean,
okay.
You wanna save them all.
That's the conversation I want.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
wanna save them all.
conversation. Please,
You wanna
okay.
save them all, but if that's not
Okay.
a possibility, you know, you're trying to reduce the,
But is it right? He's doing the right thing. And the other 8 children are doing the wrong thing knowingly. So you're going to sacrifice 1 child for the sake of 8. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just
Okay,
discussing
so
it
you're
with you.
saying the one child is playing on the tracks that is,
Wrong.
No longer
no,
used.
yes,
whereas the other ones put themselves in a position to get.
exactly. What would you do? I want to hear from you. If you are in that position, what would you do?
You do what you can do. I mean,
Which is what?
try to notify all the kids to move.
Okay, that's one point.
That's all you can do.
That's one point.
Before you come to trouble.
One thing, if you also, yes,
Put yourself in harm's way and try to, you take the hit.
that's one thing. And also remember, those old tracks, you know, might not be functionable. So if the train goes, you're not only putting that child in jeopardy, but all the passengers of the train. Remember that. So that's where ethics come in. What should I do?
Well, just kind of to piggyback on that, I had a friend that was crossing, some tracks and saw kids stuck because the conductor, I guess he transferred or was gonna switch tracks. So the kid got his foot stuck between the tracks and there was no way. So the only thing my friend thought was either he dies, so all he did was lay the kid down. The kid didn't lose his leg from his knee down. He lived, but he lost his, you know, part of his limb.
That's what, like in a situation like this, is like any decision that you make has consequences. And that's why we have, and the decision that we're gonna make is gonna be based on our values and beliefs. What we think would not out of a bad place, but out of a good place. Should I run towards the train and be in the middle of these tracks and try to wave to the train? Hopefully he will see me, the conductor will see me and stop. Or maybe the kids know how to listen to the voices of the train coming because they know these are functional track, so I don't do anything at all and let it play. This is what I mean by ethical dilemmas, like you said before. So there is no right or wrong. Because whatever the results are going to happen, it really depends. Some people say, yeah, and a lot of people, the first day, and I always hear it, maybe we can sacrifice the one for all. You know, and I hear it, you know, but it might be right, it might be wrong. And the question is like, what if it was my child? And I'm not only putting him in jeopardy, but I'm putting all the passengers of that train. So do I sacrifice one and the passengers, and that child didn't do anything wrong? Or the 8 children, they knew better? You know, it really depends. That's what I call by an ethical dilemma. So this is what we're going to go through today, and we're going to have a lot of examples on what we do. I have a short video. Does anyone remember a movie called Extreme Measures? Jane Hackman and Hugh Grant? Okay, this is part of the movie. It's like a couple of minutes.
Good doctors do the correct thing. Great doctors have the guts to do the right thing. Your father had those guts. So do you. 2 patients on either side of the room. One a Gold Shield cop, the other a maniac that pulled a gun on a city bus. Who do you work on first? You knew, Guy. You knew. If you could cure cancer by killing one person, wouldn't you have to do that? Wouldn't that be the brave thing to do? One person and cancer's gone tomorrow. You thought you were paralyzed. What would you have done to be able to walk again? Anything. You said it yourself. Anything. You were like that for 24 hours. Helen hasn't walked for 12 years. I can cure her. And everyone like her. The door's open. You can go out there and put a stop to everything and it'll all be over. Or we can go upstairs and change medicine forever. It's your call, Guy.
Guy?
Maybe you're right. Those men upstairs, maybe there isn't much point to their lives. Maybe they are doing a great thing for the world. Maybe they are heroes. But they didn't choose to be. You chose for them. You didn't choose your wife, or your granddaughter. You didn't ask for volunteers. You chose for them. And you can't do that, because you're a doctor. And you took an oath. And you're not God. So I don't care. I don't care if you can do what you say you can. I don't care if you can find the cure for every disease on this planet. You tortured and murdered those men upstairs. And that makes you a disgrace to your profession. And I hope you go to jail for the rest of your life. I'm sorry.
Who do you think is right? Who do you think is wrong? The story is Gene Hackman is a great doctor. He's almost finding a cure for cancer for people that have been disabled most of their life. He has been getting homeless people from the street and conducting researches on them without them knowing and without them volunteering and without them accepting. And these people die, but he figures they're homeless, no one will care. At least we're working for the good of the humanity. So it's okay to do that. Who do you think is right? Who do you think is wrong? There is no judging here. So who do you think is right? Who do you think is wrong?
The guy is right.
Guy is right. Why?
Because he sees other people suffering, and he's doing it without their permission.
What if you had a sister or a daughter or a son that needed a cure that the doctor will get soon to make them live?
I would go for my ethics. I wouldn't do it.
Okay,
I
so you
wouldn't sacrifice other people for.
you wouldn't. Okay.
I wouldn't sacrifice them willingly. I mean, there are other avenues to get research, volunteers.
Yes, and some people say it can be done on animals, but again, there are PETA will come running and will tell you, you know what, you're sacrificing animals. Yes.
I feel that the homeless are humans also, and they didn't even know what was happening to them. This doctor was taking advantage of people, and I don't think that's right.
Okay. Let me see a show of, yes, you wanted to say something.
Well, I guess I would question the doctor, since that's someone homeless, not actually knowing what the outcome was going to be for the research, and he doesn't even help learn and say, what the actual outcome is.
So it's kind of gray area for you somehow. Okay, can I see a show of hands who will the doctor that is doing the cancer researches? Come on, be brave, it's okay.
What's the question?
The question is like, who is with Gene Hackman?
Oh, who sides with him?
You will side with him. Can I see a show of hands? Okay. And I understand that, by the way. You know, my younger sister died from cancer 5 years ago. So I'm personally touched by that. So it will come to a point where can I see someone else die instead of my sister? Or is it okay for my sister to die? I mean, she died, but it just like, it comes to that point. So I understand that we can think about both. And in the same movie, by the way, a little bit before that scene, Gene Hackman had given a kind of toxin that works for 24 hours for Hugh Grant, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And he told him, I told you that my research can cure you. Would you want to be cured? And he said, yes. He told him, what would you do to walk again? He told him, anything. So this is what I'm saying, you know, when we are personally involved, it's easier because if we are not personally involved, it's easier because we are on the outside of the picture to take those decisions. And sometimes to be even self-righteous. Right? But when we are into the decision and we are personally affected of that, that's when really the dilemmas and the conflict starts going on. And we start weighing everything, what's good, what's bad. And thank you for your courage, for saying that you will stand with that. Yeah, me too. She was a young, brilliant doctor. She was 38 years old. She had 2 boys and she died from cancer. So I understand where you're coming from. Another example, if a woman gets pregnant and during the first 3-4 months, before the 20th week, they do ultrasound and they found that the baby is extremely deformed. So even if it's gonna go full term, the child will be totally mentally retarded, no functions, it's gonna be cared for their life. And it's still at that age where they can abort the baby. What should the woman do? So it comes to what my religion says, what are my values says, what are my morals says, versus what is it good for the child? Is it right for the child? So all these are ethical dilemmas that we go through sometimes every day without even thinking that, oh my God, this has to do with ethics. So that's why we're going to discuss a lot of things today, different examples to try to, and I expect a lot more answers from you. So the case studies, some of the case studies, we all remember the Enron case, remember? In the beginning of 2000. It basically, in ethics, what people don't understand, that when something unethical happens, it has what we call a ripple effect. It doesn't only affect the people in the center of what's going on, but it goes to everybody. Enron affected all of us. We are in this economical situation today where we are in because of Enron, somehow. So it did only not affected the people that were there, but it affected almost all of us. You know, the workers or the employees that were working there, they lost all their money. A lot of people lost their investment. And only the people at the top made a lot of money. They did go to jail. One of them had a 24 years sentence, and another was released in 2011. Then Arthur Andersen was one of the biggest, do we know who Ernst & Young are and Deloitte? They are the biggest auditing accounting companies in the whole wide world, if you want to call it. The biggest one was actually Arthur Andersen. And because when the Enron problem hit, they destroyed a lot of documents. So they were actually accused of fraud. And I don't know how it's called, in getting in the way of an investigation or something like that. So they the reputation went totally down. 3 years later, they were acquitted by the courts, but it was too late. The company was gone. And now it divided into Ernst & Young and Deloitte and Tush. Tyco International, also 2 executives stole $600 million from the organization. They are scheduled to be released in 2030. Adelphia Communication was the same thing. WordCom, we had it, if you remember the WordCom, also at the beginning of the 2000s, the CEO was found of fraud, conspiracy, and SEC charges, and he was sentenced for 25 years. Do we remember Martha Stewart? That's the same thing. She doubled with stocks, she doubled with secrets, and she went to jail. And she's a hero now. I mean, it's just like she's out, and it's like no one really cares anymore. She has the money, when money talks, when money walks, I guess, you know? So it's about, she went through that. Lance Armstrong is the biggest fraud case of recent times. He was doping all these years, and he always lied and lied and lied, and it was like a full circle of abuse of drugs and all that. So this is was it ethical for him? He said that we needed to win. He goes like, you know what he said? Everybody else does it. So we need to level the field. And most of the people that do things that are unethical, you will hear them say, everybody else does it. What's the big deal? And this is where we need to start to stop and think about what we're doing. Some reflections on ethics is that a lot of people, like I said, had a ripple effect. A lot of people can be affected by these cases and but whatever happens, especially if it's a big companies. Not only the employees lose their jobs, the stakeholders, and the stock market can crash. And if the stock market crash, we are all affected, even if we don't own stocks. It's talking about the word economy. Integrity is very important, and having integrity, it prevents fraud and abuse. And there are people, a lot of people in organizations that act with the divide and conquer. They say, if I have a team and I put them against each other, I'm going to know what's going on. And no one will even get to be in my position because I will always be in control of the situation. Business within a social context have duty to others. And remember, culture has a lot to do. Our own cultures have a lot to do with how we look at ethics. People can have tendency, like I said, to rationalize saying why I'm doing this wrong. It's not wrong because everybody, no one will know. I'm not hurting anyone. No one will ever know, and everybody does it. And you hear a lot of people say that. So little behaviors go a long way. We don't have to be leaders in our organizations to have ethics. Each one of us is responsible for our own actions. Each one of us is responsible for our own ethics. We don't have to be a manager, a supervisor, a CEO, a VP, a director. We all have to keep our own ethics, even as person, to have self-respect. So an ethical behavior, like we said before, it will be everybody does it, nobody will notice, I deserve it, I earn it, or I'm not paid enough, so it's okay to get that extra kick. That was a joke, or someone else can handle it. And I want you to know that once you start having the thoughts and these discussions in your mind, stop. Because this is the beginning of an unethical action to do, and you need to remember that. So all these issues that we might have not thought that it has something to do with ethical, especially that we deal with health information. I don't know how far each one of you has access to any medical information about people that come here, but we have the HIPAA, we have the confidentiality, we have privacy, and all that falls under ethical dilemma. Ethical issues can affect finances of any organization, either for profit or non-profit. So there are financial risks. And also, if a company gets to have known a reputation for unethical behavior or unethical actions, who wants to work for a company or for an organization that doesn't have a good reputation? There are a lot of consumers out there that will boycott. I mean, we saw in the last 2 weeks what happened with the Clippers. You know, it just like everybody tried, even the players were, if they could, they would have boycott, you know, the basketball matches. So people will boycott companies that they feel that they are not ethical or they're not at the level of their values and morals. The employee trust and loyalty depends a lot on the ethical behavior of the company. Who has read the ethical conduct of the organization they work for? None? Do you know if you have a code of conduct at your organization? Have you read it? Who is like a supervisor, a manager, a director here? Okay. Read it. Well, as a supervisor, you need to share it with your employees, and that's why it's very important for you to look for that code of conduct to see what you're doing. Is it within whatever the organization has as path for code of ethics or not? Because we will talk about leaders and managers and how they influence the ethical dilemmas at the workplace. So let's go for some definitions. I know it's a little bit boring, but I'll try to make it as fun as possible. So ethics, like we said, like are principles or moral standards that we work with. Business ethics is like an organization will have ethics, will have principles, will have guidelines, will have a set of rules that everybody that's working in that organization have to abide by, and it has to be black and white. For example, if they tell you you cannot use the equipment for personal uses and you're caught using it, that can be a base for termination.